All right. For today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers HasLab DEATHSAURUS. This is our third Transformers project under the HasLab division of Hasbro, which, if you're unaware, is basically Hasbro's own crowdfunding platform where they can do bigger projects that really wouldn't have a space at regular brick and mortar retail. Allegedly, we can talk about that a bit, but that's the pitch of it. And yeah, our first HasLab project was, of course, HasLab Unicron, and then this one is much more of a companion piece to our second one was HasLab Victory Saber, because DEATHSAURUS, if you're unaware, is basically the villain from Transformers Victory, one of the Japanese G1 Transformers shows. Now, this set comes with quite a bit, so there's going to be a little bit more hard cutting in my videos than there usually are, just because this set comes with a lot, and it's going to be hard to kind of keep it all on frame or even on my table at one time. So it's going to be a little bit different than my usual video format, but shouldn't be too bad. And I also want to say I am going to do a separate video for Pipo and Boater, just because there is too much in this set to look at in one video, and these two kind of are just like the supplementals for this set. They weren't even part of the backer goals. They were like a surprise bonus after the project had already been backed, and I think I have enough to say about them that I'll just, do them in their own video. But yeah, before we kind of get on into it, I'm going to quickly run through everything that comes in the set. Obviously, we've got DEATHSAURUS himself here, who originally was one from the Breast Force from Japan, which they've now they pretty much have taken out all the mentions of breast and replaced it with chest. So instead of breast masters, he comes with two chest masters, which, it's a whole thing. It's still silly, but they're making it a little bit less silly, I guess, by using chest instead of breast. But we've got eagle breast and tiger breast here, or as they're titling them, eagle chest and lion chest, or tiger chest. So yeah, we'll take a look at these guys individually, but these combine with DEATHSAURUS here. Obviously, we come with a nice big display stand as well here, which comes with an arm to actually, have it be on display, and then this little piece which helps attach to the alt mode. He also comes with this pretty magnificent throne for him to sit on in robot mode. And then in terms of the weapons, we've got this big scimitar blade that he had in the cartoon. We've got the living metal destroying cannon, I think is what this is called, and this was one of the backer goal things, which passed luckily. But yeah, that's pretty cool. We also have this ball and chain, I think flail, right? I can never remember if flail or mace is the one with the chain. I'm pretty sure it's flail. But yeah, apparently this is using the same mold as Masterpiece Megatron, or at least it was originally when they were talking about it, which is kind of interesting, but still cool. Comes with this arrow for one of the chest masters like weapon modes, and then comes with the same blast effects that we've gotten a million times by now. They originally came with Siege Jetfire, of course, but this time they're done in pink. This is maybe the 5th or 6th time I've gotten these molds. Still cool to have more of them, but not overly exciting. But yeah, now we'll just transition over to actually looking at the box of the figure before we move on to everything else. Some nice artwork on the front of the box here. I'm not going to go into like how everything was individually packaged. Just figured I'd show off the art on the front here, which I don't usually do, but since this is a big special item, very nice art there. I believe this was done by Guido Guidi, who's a longtime Transformers artist, which looks really, really nice. And you can see on the back there, on the side here, we've just got Transformers and that kind of metallic purple foil print there. And then the product shots for the figure, so you can see most of the things that the figure is capable of doing. Pretty standard stuff there, just, in a kind of high end with a lot of these glossy prints here. But yeah, looks pretty good. Now we can get on to some of the actual elements that the figure comes with. Next up, we'll take a quick look at the base that the figure comes with. It's got a pretty big, substantial platform here, which has some nice sculpted detail on the side, just kind of some generic techie detail. It's all just done in gray plastic, but it does kind of have that like mixed plastic effect where you can see this sort of like weird pearlescent effect where you can see all the like mixture lines from the plastic, which I think works well enough. If you're curious about size comparison, here it is with the stand that came with Victory Saber. Just so you can see, it's a lot bigger, a lot beefier, more substantial, which, you know, to be fair, like the figure in and of itself is also a bit bigger than Victory Saber in the individual modes, but and also has to have the chair. So I feel like it's warranted for it to be this big, but yeah, that's what those look like together. And then obviously it comes with the arm that you can use to attach, which works very much similarly to how Victory Saber's stand worked. At first, when I took this out of the box, I thought it might actually be the same part, but it's similar, but it is completely different. They do have like a pretty similar construction, and I did try, and unfortunately they're not cross-compatible, which I don't know why you'd necessarily want them to be. Like, you can kind of get the stand from Victory Saber into this, but the actual stand piece for DEATHSAURUS is too big to fit into the Victory Saber stand. I don't know why you'd really want that to be a thing, but if you were wondering, it doesn't really work. And it, you know, like I said, it works the same way where you slot it in like this for robot mode, and then this peg will just go into the back of DEATHSAURUS's waist, which I'll show off again later. And then for alt mode, you slide it in like this, and then you have this separate piece here, which again, just like Victory Saber, has that octagonal peg, so you can kind of adjust the angle of it however you like. And basically what you do with this piece is, if we bring on DEATHSAURUS himself here, he's just got a little peg hole right in there, and then the rest of it just kind of slots over this part of his belly. And once you've gotten it, I find it's a little bit easier to get this plugged in without the stand attached to it, and then to attach it to the stand afterwards. And then you can kind of just bring down the legs here and peg it on like that, and then you can get DEATHSAURUS in kind of a flying pose here, which looks pretty cool. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to use this display option, but it's nice to have it as an option there. It's a little bit wobbly back and forth like Star Saber is, but it does feel sturdy. It doesn't feel like it's going to break or anything. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the stand, other than the chair, which I'll kind of move on to now. It's pretty simple to connect it to the stand. Basically, you've just got 4 big peg holes right here and then 4 big pegs on the bottom of the chair. I also do like, I mean, I don't know why they would do this any other way, but I like that it also covers up the slot that you would slide the arm into so that it's not, you know, visible and ugly when you're not using that feature. But yeah, chair just plugs in simple like that to the back of the stand. And then, you know, obviously we'll get into to how DEATHSAURUS actually sits in this chair when we look at the robot mode. But another thing I wanted to show off now is on the back of the chair, he also does have storage for most of the accessories that the figure comes with, which is kind of a neat feature here. So starting off with the living metal destroying cannon, basically it kind of just folds in half here, and then this hole right here corresponds to that peg, and then this weird little like zigzag line is kind of, you know, the cutout for the top of the gun here, so you can just peg it on just like that, and that's where that goes. And then we can take the arrow that's used for the for lion chest or tiger chests alt mode. I'm gonna keep calling him lion chest, but lion chest is Leozak's one, and tiger chest is the one that comes with DEATHSAURUS. So apologies if I screw that up. But basically, you've just got 2 slots right here, and then 2 pegs on the arrow, so you can just line those up like that. And then for the flail. The handle here just has a tab on the side of it that goes into that slot right there. And then for the ball itself, rather than just leaving it dangling there, you just use the screw hole here, and it'll just peg into the top, and then you kind of just work the chain around so it kind of, you know, sits like that. Sits a little bit cleaner. It doesn't usually stay, but and then you can take the sword here, has just a big trapezoidal, you know, peg hole right here that corresponds to this piece like that. So then you just peg that on, and then you know, obviously if you have him in alt mode, this would be attached to the character. But if you want some extra storage for the shield piece that turns into the alt mode's tail, you can just peg it on right here. It has this separate handle piece that pegs on like that, and then can just peg onto the back of the throne like that. So that's nice that it has all those storage options, especially since a lot of this stuff doesn't actually store in alt mode proper. So it's nice to have that option, so you can have everything housed with the figure without, while he's not actually like holding everything. So that's good to have. But moving on. Next up, we'll take a look at the chest masters, or breast masters if you prefer, that come with the figure, eagle chest and tiger chest. In terms of size comparisons, how they, what size they are in this mode, here they are with one of, Soundwave's cassettes. So obviously quite a bit bigger. They're not really meant to be cassette bots, but just in case you were wondering how big they were. In terms of eagle chest here, I'll start off with him. Basically, the transformation is fairly simple. You take this handle piece here and just fold that down, which clears you up to fold out the wings here, and then their wing tips here will just fold out to the side on that swivel there, just like that. And then you can leave the guns out in this mode or fold them back down, but you need to fold them out a little bit just to have clearance to fold the legs out, and then you can kind of fold them back down or leave them out if you prefer. And then flip up the head here, and then take the handle and just fold it to the underside of the belly, and then take this blue panel here, which folds open to be the tail feathers. And there we have eagle chest in his robot mode, looking pretty cool here. In terms of comparisons, here he is with Laserbeak from, I guess that was the Netflix version. But yeah, in terms of articulation, the head can swivel around here, and they can also hinge up and down, both at this joint here for transformation, and then also at this separate joint here. The beak can open and close, can open about that far, well, a little bit farther, but looks pretty good there. I do kind of wish they had picked out the eyes here. They're kind of just molded in place, but it's fine. The wings have a decent number of joints. They can't really fold up all that much because they kind of have stoppers here, so that's about as far up as you get them, but they can obviously, fold all the way in for how they fold up for transformation. The little feet are just on ball joints here, and then a separate little hinge, and then obviously the tail feathers you can fold up and down. And then he's got some integration with the throne that I'll show off later, but that's eagle chest for now. And then tiger chest here, who's obviously the outer chest, so looks a little bit less like a box than eagle chest did. Has these really nice chromed winglet sections here, which were packed separately. You just kind of peg them in. I guess some people had some issues with chrome scratching like in the packaging for Victory Saber, so it's nice that they did do those separately, so that was less of an issue. And yeah, I mean, obviously just kind of looks like a chest in this mode, but still looks nice. And then in terms of transformation for him, basically what you want to do is you want to take this panel like this, fold out this little section, and then fold it out, and this will be the tail for the tiger mode. And then you want to take these sections and they just extend out to the side like this, and then you pretty much just doing this so you've got clearance to flip these sections around. You take these sections, which will be the back legs, and then flip them around like that. And then for this mode, you just compress these back in and leave them how they were, and then fold out the little legs here just like that. And then the head does have a bit of a extension, so you can pull it out, and then you're supposed to take these and fold them up like that. And there you have tiger chest in his robot mode. And yeah, tiger is kind of a generous description for this creature. I mean, I like it, but it does not really look like a tiger. But it does look fairly accurate to how the original one looked. In terms of articulation for him, the head can kind of swivel back and forth a little bit, and it's also on a ball joint at the end, so it can rotate around like that. The mouth can open and close, though it is pretty tight, so usually it takes a few pulling of the tab there to actually get it to open up like that. And then the front legs are on ball joints at the hips, which pretty much just gives them a swivel range, and then they have a little knee joint there as well. And then the back legs are on swivels in the back, and then also a hinge for the knees. And then the tail you can kind of wiggle up and down. And then obviously you can do what you want with these. You can extend them out if you really wanted to. I mean, it's kind of a weird creature. Like I said, doesn't really look like a tiger per se, but I like it okay. And then in terms of comparisons for him, here he is with Netflix Ravage, just so you can see what they look like together. And yeah, there's more to these guys. They also have their own individual weapon modes, but we'll kind of show those off later when we're looking at, the accessories and how they interact with the robot mode for DEATHSAURUS. So for now, we'll move on. And then finally, we can actually get on to the main event himself here and start taking a look at DEATHSAURUS and his big, big dumb space chicken kaiju mode. I've always really liked DEATHSAURUS's alt mode, but it is a little bit silly. But yeah, no, I think it turned out really, really nicely. There's a couple things with it that I'm not crazy about, but for the most part, I think he looks really good. In terms of articulation in this mode, the head has kind of an interesting setup here where he's got a swivel and a hinge, but he has this like neck flap for you to fold down to kind of make it look like it's kind of more continuous joints, which is kind of a neat way to do it. The jaw can obviously open and close, and he's got some good detail there. And then on the inside of his jaw here, he does have a port for blast effects, so you can plug it in like that or use any other blast effects, which is a nice touch. I like the way that they did that. I think that's much superior than the way that they did it with the Studio Series Dinobots, where with like the little peg that plugs into the blast effects. But granted, he's got a bigger head, so he's got a little bit more real estate to work with here. The wings can swivel. They just hinge open and close like that, and then they also have this separate hinge like that, so they can fold up and down, but otherwise they're all just one piece aside from that. The little arms here are on universal joints at the shoulders, so they can rotate around like that and rotate out to the side. They also do have this joint for transformation if you want some sort of like, butterfly joint for this, but I don't think it really looks good as that. He's got a a bicep swivel here, and then just a hinge at the elbow that folds up all the way for transformation. For the legs, which will obviously end up being the robot mode arms, this is probably my biggest issue with the kaiju mode, is I'm not crazy about the way they did the legs, just because it's like, this is the upper leg and that's the lower leg. I just think it looks a little bit ridiculous, but as is, you can swivel them around like this. They're just on a nice ratchet joint there, and then they do like kind of click into place and lock in, but if you unclick them, then they can rotate out to the side. Obviously, there's just going to be the robot mode shoulders, and then there is, I guess in this mode, this would be a thigh swivel, and then I don't think you're really supposed to use that because this is supposed to be one big joint, but he does have that. And then the little back section here doesn't really get a lot of hinging movement. It pretty much just goes like that. Otherwise, it kind of starts to unpeg this panel here. And then the foot itself is on a hinge and then can swivel around like that. And then each of the toes are on a little hinge as well. So this is how it's supposed to be, which is technically more accurate for him to have like the, big legs like this with the big upper section. What I tend to prefer to do rather than this is I rotate these around and then rotate the feet around as well, and then have it be more of like a digitigrade kind of look so that he can actually, have a bit more of a zigzag to his legs. So he's got 3 sections rather than the 2. So they're a little bit more proportional. So I personally prefer to do that, but officially it is supposed to be the other way. It's just I just think that looks way better, even though it is a little bit less accurate to how the beast mode was originally. He doesn't really have that many like stability issues either way. Like he kind of stands up just fine, but personally, I think that just looks a lot better, in my opinion. But yeah, to get onto comparisons in this mode, just for the standard one, of course, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe in his robot mode, so you can see what they look like together. For some other, beast mode comparisons, here he is with Studio Series Grimlock, just so you can see what they look like. Here he is with Transmetal 2 Megatron, just for another dragon comparison there. I thought this was a fun one. Here he is with Siege, Earthrise, I think, Double Dealer, just because another, dumb bird mode. There was some speculation for a while that they might try to retool Double Dealer into DEATHSAURUS, which I think would have worked well enough as a mold, but since we got, Victory Saber as like a big HasLab project, then this definitely feels like it's, more in line with being able to go toe-to-toe with that toy, but that's what they look like together. Here he is with Victory Leo in his beast mode there, just so you can see how that works. I'm going to be, having to shift the camera down a lot just because this guy really does not fit on frame. And last but not least, here he is with Star Saber in his robot mode, just so you can see how they stack up. I figured there wasn't really any point to showing the weird giant space chicken off with the with the jet for Star Saber, so I'm just going to do the robot mode comparison. But yeah. Next up, we're going to be getting into transformation. You can attach the chests in this mode and keep them on for the entirety of the transformation. Basically, they just attach in the back here. So, you know, it's got this panel that kind of springs closed, and you can push in eagle breast, or eagle chest. So you can push it in just enough so that it kind of stays like that flush. But you can also push it in the rest of the way so that there is clearance for tiger chest. And you kind of have to fold up these sections here so it sits on his back like that. It can be kind of tricky to get it to, like, if you have these like legs oriented in the wrong way, then sometimes it can be kind of annoying to get him locked into place, but it's not usually too bad if everything is lined up. And basically that's how it looks when that's attached in alt mode. I'm going to take them off for transformation just because it's a bit less of a pain, but they can stay on for transformation. You just have to be kind of careful to, you know, not have things brush past the chrome sections there. But yeah, we'll do a quick cut before we move on to that. Actually, before we move on to transformation, I forgot to show off that in this mode, he also can wield the living metal destroying cannon here. Just was, it looks super silly, but it is something that he did in the show a few times. Basically, what you want to do is just take this this little blue tab underneath here. He's got this slot on either of his shoulders, but we'll use this one here. I found that it was really hard to peg in the first time that I did it, but now it seems to go on just fine. Like, it clicks into place, but it is still kind of like wobbly on there, but it stays okay. And then on the underside of his arm here, he's got a little slot here that will just plug onto one of the tabs on the handle, which he has on either side. So again, you can do this either way, and just pegs on like that. And so you can have the big space chicken holding the giant space gun, which is a super silly look, but again, it's something that he did in the show, so it's nice that that is an option. But now we can actually get on to transformation proper. I've put his legs back here in the stock configuration, how they're supposed to be, just so I can kind of show off the full transformation as intended here. First thing you want to do is just unlock the knee pads here, which peg in sometimes really securely onto these pegs, which are actually on the tail. So that frees it up for you to just rip the tail off and put that off to the side for now, because that turns into his shield in robot mode. And then the next thing you want to do is just take his little chicken arms here and kind of fold them up like that, and then fold them around on this piece so they sit just like that, and then we'll leave those there for now. And then you can take the wings themselves, and they will unlock from the body and then shift over to the other side just like that and click back into place, and do that obviously on both sides, which then frees you up to take the legs here, which just tab in on these armatures. You just untab them like that, and then this whole thing has a swivel right here, which you rotate around like that, and then that same like clip tab there will go into the slot where this was once tabbed in, and just locks in like that pretty securely. Just like that, and then we'll mess with the arms later. For now, we'll do the legs. You want to take these panels in the back here, and they will just unlock like that. They lock in pretty securely, so sometimes it takes a little bit of force. And then once you've done that, you can just unfold the legs here. He's got kind of two knee joints, the actual ratcheting joint and then the separate joint. The separate joint has this like locking tab, so when you rotate it the rest of the way, then you can kind of plug the knee into it, so then that locks up that joint, so you're just using the proper knee joint there. Just do that on both sides. And then these two little side skirt panels you just fold down. It's really important to remember to fold these up when going back to the kaiju mode, because otherwise the legs just like don't sit properly and nothing seems to be tabbing in. And it took me forever to figure out what I was doing wrong, and it turned out to be just those little parts were making a huge difference. So if you're having that issue, that might be something to check out, because it's a very easy step to forget. And then on the back here, you take these panels and just fold them back up to where they were and click them back into place. And then these panels will fold out like that, flip around like this, and then he's got a tab right here that will go into that slot right there. So you just fold it down and then peg in these panels to kind of fill in the legs there, which is a nice piece of engineering, and just do that on both sides. And then for the feet, you just have to flip out the heels here and get them flat-footed on the ground. Pretty simple. Like that, and then we can get him standing up here, and we're definitely going to have to adjust the camera a little bit. All right. Next up, might have to see some of my background here because he's a very, very tall lad. Next up, we'll do the arms. You can just rotate them down like this. Again, they do kind of like lock into place, so you kind of just want to unlock them there. You want to take the chicken feet, fold up the toes, rotate around the feet like that, and then fold them down like that. Do that on both sides. And then you take these panels on the arms and fold them out. And then you want to take this whole section with the hand, which sometimes can get a little bit stuck in there, and rotate that through. Oh no, I'm doing this backwards. Rotate it around like that. There we go. And push them through this way so that the claws kind of sit on the back of the arms, and then rotate the hands out the rest of the way, and then fold these panels back in to plug into place. So rotate that around, open up this panel here, and then rotate out the hand, and then close those back up. Get into the home stretch here, and then for the head here, I usually find, so you have to like unlock this panel, and there's no real good place to grab it other than this little slot, which kind of hurts my fingernail. So what I usually do is I will unlock it, but then before pulling it the rest of the way, then I'll fold this panel up, because the reason that this panel exists is so that when you are pulling this back, you're not scratching this chrome piece. So it's really important that you open this panel, but you can unlock it a little bit just so you can get the proper leverage to open it up before folding it down the rest of the way, and then just close that back into place. And then before bringing the head back, you have to take these panels on the back here and just unfold these, and then they're both on these little armature sections, which you rotate around like that, and then fold them back up to cover up the kaiju mode arms, which is a little neat piece of engineering there. And then you can fold the head down the rest of the way to just sit on his back. And then last but not least, you just take his little horns here, and they both go one click out to the side. And there we have DEATHSAURUS looking quite magnificent in his robot mode. It's a fun transformation. It's simple enough. It's only really got like one step that I forget to do a lot with these little panels, but the joints all feel good, so it's like not really a pain to do. It's like simple but engaging, and I think it really hits the right mark there. But yeah, he looks great in his robot mode here. Now, obviously, to get the full effect, you know, he's got the chest sections here. We've got the two different options where, well, three different options really, where you can take the eagle chest if you want and just plug that in just enough to kind of like lock it into place, and then, you know, leave it like that. And that's an option. Or you can push it the rest of the way and then plug on a tiger chest here. So you can get the full DEATHSAURUS look there. Make sure that's actually locked into place, which I think is definitely how I display him, because he looks really magnificent with the gold chrome there. Now, in terms of getting these off, for tiger chest, you can just pull it off, obviously, but for eagle chest, you can kind of rotate up the head, and there's a slot back here that you can kind of push it out from the other side, because otherwise it would just be impossible to get that back out. So it's nice that that was a consideration, kind of similar to how it worked for the Bumblebee movie Studio Series Soundwave, because otherwise, if you're just pushing the box fully into the chest, like, you're not getting that back out again. But yeah, no, I think he looks really, really great. Now, obviously, the other part of his alt mode that you have kind of displayed with him here, you know, for a place for it to go, it unfolds and becomes a shield. It has, like I said earlier, it has this unpegging section from the middle that, if you want him to hold it as a shield, you plug it in like this, and then you can actually hold on to it. But if you want to store it, you just, you know, put it on like that, so it can sit to the side or down like that. And then on one of his shoulders, just his right arm here, you can flip out this section and then just peg it on like that, which works. You know, you can leave it like that or fold it out the rest of the way. That's usually how I do it. I do wish, I mean, this is accurate, but I do wish that it had maybe like a spot to store on the back, since this is the one like integral part of his alt mode that becomes an accessory, so it's always going to be something I want to display with him. But you know, it doesn't look quite as good with this big part here on his arm, especially with like the peg holes, and it's got like the, you know, like they didn't put a ton of like, you know, sculpted detail specifically for display on the inside of these parts, so it looks a little bit distracting, and you can't quite see the full silhouette of the wings. Like I said, it's accurate, because he did have this, but, you know, I would have preferred if it had another, like, less obtrusive place for it to store in robot mode, but whatever. But yeah, in terms of his other accessories, obviously we've got quite a few to go through here. Like I said, he does use, rather than like a peg system, he uses the more like, masterpiece style with the slots on either side and then the slots in his palms here. So you can just open up his hands and then kind of work this in. Usually with a shield, I kind of just put this piece in first and then plug the shield in after, because I find that a little bit easier, especially because this one's kind of a pain. But yeah, you just want to get it lined up. Again, I really prefer the peg and slot system that they do for Generations to this kind of more masterpiece style, just because it's more of a pain, and then you can't have him hold like other figures' weapons, but it's fine. They probably did it that way, honestly, just so they could reuse the mace accessory from Masterpiece Megatron. But yeah, speaking of, or the flail, sorry, we can use that as well. We've got a few to get through here, but just works the same way if you want to see what that looks like. The shield is the one that I find is the most difficult to tab into his hand, just because it has that, this extra bit that you have to work his fingers around, whereas everything else you can kind of slot it in and close the fingers afterwards. But that's what he looks like holding the flail there. Very cool. And then we can do the big sword next. Obviously, it just works the same way. It looks very, very cool. Kind of makes him look, by comparison, it makes Star Saber's sword look a little bit too wimpy, but it's fine. I think that it looks good as an accessory. And then last but not least, we can do the living metal destroying cannon here, which works very much the same way. Again, kind of a pain to get this one pegged in, just because it's so like unwieldy. Kind of have to bring his arm up a little bit, fold that out to the side, and the handle luckily does have a bit of a swivel to it, so it can be kind of make it a little bit easier to get it tabbed in, but it's still kind of annoying just because it's such an unwieldy weapon. And then it also does have these two tabs here, which can plug into his shoulder, so you can actually have it, a little bit more securely in his arm. And I think that looks super cool there. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it for the accessories, other than the chest masters. They also each individually have weapon modes, which we'll get to real quick. But yeah, this I'll go over storage for all this stuff, because there is actually storage for most of it in robot mode, which is nice to see. But again, it's a little bit annoying that they didn't do that for the alt mode as well, which, I get. They always do that with the like big beast formers, where it doesn't really have a good place to go on the outside of the alt mode that doesn't just like look stupid, but it's a bit unfortunate. But yeah, for the chests here, for Tiger Chest, his is pretty simple. Basically what you want to do is take this section here and kind of fold down this little thing here, and then this little T-shaped tab will go into the bottom of his jaw. And then this is where there's a mode where you want to widen these, because this was not a feature that the original toy actually had, but he becomes kind of a bow and arrow. And then he used this in this mode in the cartoon, but the original toy didn't actually have this feature, because in the cartoon, the winglets get like way wider and actually look like a huge longbow. So, it doesn't quite get the same effect, but, without making it just like literally impossible, I think this is the best they could have done for it. And then for this one, you actually tab this to the underside of his arm using these two tabs here like this, which looks a little bit weird in terms of him holding it. And then you have to like bring this way out to the side and then use one of the tabs on the arrow. I think it has to be the smaller one. This one doesn't fit, unfortunately. And you just plug that in here like that. And then you can kind of, pose his arm mostly so it's like pulling the arrow. I haven't really gotten it so the hand actually like overlaps with it at all, but that's the intended effect. It looks good from some angles, but then from other angles it just like looks a little bit silly because he's not actually holding this in any way. It's just pegged onto the underside of his arm. But props on them for even trying to do this feature, because it is something that he did in the show, and it's having an actual bow and arrow being able to be wielded properly by like a transforming figure is a huge ask. So it's not perfect, but I think it's about as good as they could have done. And again, from certain angles, I think it does look pretty good, even if like you look at it from a top-down view and you're like, that's kind of fudging it, but whatever. But yeah, it's still cool that they attempted that feature. And then for eagle chest here, basically all you do is you fold down the handle and then you fold these out to the side just and flip out these guns. And this is the one that the original toy actually did do. And then you have this big stupid box gun. Again, it's kind of just like obligatory for, you know, the breast master or chest master gimmick, but it does look a little bit silly. So, you know, they did it only about as well as the original toy did it, which is to say not very well, but it is nice that they did replicate that feature there. But yeah, obviously in terms of storage, the chest masters can just go back where they were. But for everything else, if we flip it around into the back here, he does have this peg here, which corresponds to the other side of the sword that actually has this angled trapezoid slot here. So you can peg it in at a bit of an angle like that, which is nice. He's got slots on his arms here, so you can take the arrow and tab that in, just like that. And then I don't think that the living metal destroying cannon has a place to go in this mode. I mean, you can fold it up like it was, like that, but I might have to look in the instructions again for that, but I don't see anywhere where it could tab in. I guess if you left it open, maybe you can use that tab. If you fold that up, I think that probably, no, yeah, there's really not the clearance for that just because it kind of bumps into the head there. So if there's a place to store it, sorry, that's not one of the features I've discovered yet, but yeah, you know. Also, I can't really figure out why this part folds down for the cannon. I mean, I know these because you can kind of just like compress them, so when it's folded up, it doesn't, you know, these aren't like sticking out to the side, but haven't quite figured out why this piece folds up and down, because it seems like it would be a secondary handle, but there's really no way to get him to hold that, and it doesn't even have any tabs to like try to be a handle, so I'm not really sure what that's about, but I don't know. It's just a big weird gun anyway. And then for the flail, I think the flail, you just dump it in the I forgot about that. Yeah, you just kind of put it in the spot here. I think maybe this tab can plug in, so at least you can have some part of it actually tabbed in. No, that doesn't fit. Yeah, no, the flail you're just supposed to dump into the back of his head, which, to be fair, it stays, but, you know, it's not exactly the most elegant piece of storage. But yeah, that's how all that stuff stores. I tend to just leave it on the throne since it all has a spot to go there, but still, you know, it's a nice attempt to actually have some of the stuff actually store here. Moving on to articulation, I'm going to leave the chest masters off just to, you know, they're not cumbersome. They mostly stay out of the way, but still, it's just making my life a little bit easier. The head is on a ball joint here, so it can rotate around. It gets a decent range there. You know, pretty standard. The wings obviously can have the same articulation as they did before. The shoulders and rotate around still on that joints. Again, they do kind of lock into place on the outward movement, but once you unclick it, it has a pretty decent range in and out. He's got that bicep swivel, little over 90 degrees of bend at the elbow there. The wrists can swivel, and then the fingers can open in two separate sections. It's basically, you know, two fingers, and then the other two fingers are the things that fold in and out for whatever reason. I don't really know what that's useful for, but he can do it. I guess it's kind of doing that so he can hold the arrow, I imagine, which, yeah, I didn't do that when I posed him with it, but yeah, that's a decent touch. Why not? He's got a pretty standard waist cut here. It is kind of placed a little bit back on the waist piece, so it has kind of a weird rotation to it sometimes, but it's not terrible. And then the hips can go, he's got little side skirts and front skirts here that can fold out of the way. It can go forward on a nice ratchet there, back a lot farther, and out to the side. It's got a nice tight thigh swivel there. The knees by default, if you're just using the ratcheted knee, go about that far, about 90, but if you unlock the knee pad here, then you can bring them a little bit further, which they actually have you do for when he actually sits on the throne as well. And I do like how that works, so you've got the extra range there, but the default joint is the actual ratcheting joint rather than the friction one. And then for the feet, they can hinge in and out like that, and then there's not, you can kind of, if you fold down the heels, there's a little bit of, you know, forward and backward tilt, but when the foot is actually out full and flat, it doesn't really have any. So, you know, pretty decent articulation, nothing really like, you know, game changing or that crazy, but pretty much every joint you'd want him to have. I do find sometimes that the way that the ratchets play, he wants to like lean forward or lean back a little bit. Like if you look at the knee ratchets, it's either like this with that slight bend forward, or the next click is like that with a very slight bend backwards, which, you know, because he's got a lot of weight in the back, if you have him standing like that, then it kind of clicks that way. Whereas if you have him standing like this, there's a very, very slight lean forward. And there's not really a, I wish that it kind of sat a little bit in between those. But it's not the end of the world. There's enough play with it that you can kind of like adjust it as needed, but just worth mentioning there. And then if we bring on the stand here, obviously he's just got a peg in the back here that you can just peg it in like that. He doesn't really need the stand to stand, but if you want the stand, that's how it works. It's pretty standard. But yeah, nothing really to say about that. That's just, how it's supposed to work in this mode. And then obviously if we take off the arm piece here, we can bring back on the chair and peg that in. And now in terms of, so it's, I'm sort of two minds about this. Part of me wishes that it came with like some panel to fill this up. And it looks like maybe that was a plan at some point, because it has these like slots up here that really don't function for anything, so I'm not really sure what that's for. But basically this cutout is just so he can sit in the chair and his chicken head has somewhere to go. He doesn't quite fit into the stand as like securely as I thought he would. Basically what you want to do is you want to just bring up his legs here like this and then unlock that knee joint just so he can get a little bit further movement down, just so it can actually, you can bend his legs enough. And then the little slot here is for the horns of the chicken mode, and you want to just work the wings on either side. And again, he doesn't like quite fall down into the chair as much as you'd like. You want him to like bring this up a bit more, but like it always feels like he's not quite far down enough, even when you get this lined up so that the slots of the chicken head actually, line up with that slot there. It can be a bit annoying, but it is doable. But I wish that it kind of like clicked into place or something, because as is, I guess maybe those slots are, oh, there you go. Those slots are for these little latches. All right, well, that's what that's for. Okay, so you can actually get him sitting in there. And again, like it does slot in there. And before I wasn't having those attached, so it, that's why it wasn't quite as good. But like if you actually like look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this off on camera, but his butt's not really on the chair, and it always feels like he wants to like slide around a little bit. I wish there was like a more like secure like click into place there. Like it's not like he's just gonna like spontaneously fall off or anything. Like you can get him sitting on there and it looks okay, but it's just not quite as secure as I would have liked it to be, unfortunately. But still, it's a pretty decent effort there, and it's nice that it does lock in any way, shape, or form, but it could be a little bit more secure. And then the other feature that the throne has is if you take eagle chest here, he's got two little holes on the bottom of his feet which can peg onto these two little spots on the top here, so you can actually have him perched on the top, which is a neat look. And again, something that happened in the show a few times when he's just chilling in his throne room and he doesn't feel the need to have his chess masters in his chest. It's a cool look. And then again, we can have him pet his cat here. Have tiger chest there. But yeah, no, it is cool. And honestly, I think I am going to display him kind of sitting on the throne, just because like that's how he spent a majority of his time in the show, is just chilling in a chair. But yeah, no, it's a good display option, and I'm glad that they included it. And then last but not least, I've got him with his chess masters attached again, so we can do comparisons in this mode. Just for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe, obviously a lot taller there. He pretty much comes up to his knee. Just to show him off with these guys, because I showed him off with them before, here he is with Grimlock and Transmetal 2 Megatron. For a standard kind of commander class size comparison, here he is with Siege Jetfire, just so you can see kind of how he stacks up there. A little bit shorter than Siege Jetfire, but obviously he comes with a lot more stuff. And again, this is kind of getting into the debate of like, did this need to be a HasLab? Like if they cut out the chair and some of the extras, like he could have just been done at a commander class. And I don't know how the budget exactly breaks down, because it does seem like every commander class since Siege Jetfire has had a little bit less with it. But, there's a discussion there. I like the way that they did him, but I don't know if he quite makes up that basically extra $100 between, you know, the HasLab price and the Commander price. Not quite, but I can't remember exactly how much he was originally, because it makes it a lot easier of a pill to swallow when I, you know, forget how much I paid for him because I paid it, you know, over a year ago. But yeah, that's what they look like together. It's a whole discussion, but you know, it's been had. And then here he is with Star Saber and Victory Leo in their individual robot modes, just so you can see how he stacks up with them. I don't know if this is quite accurate to how it was in the show. My memory of the show is that he was just a little bit taller than Star Saber in his individual mode, and then when Star Saber turned into Victory Saber, he was the bigger one by a pretty significant margin, but I might be wrong about that. I don't remember there being this big of a size difference, but I don't mind it necessarily. I just figured that was worth mentioning. And then last but not least, we can take these guys together and show him off with the full Victory Saber combined mode. That was supposed to be a hidden cut, but I forgot to click record the first time I did it, so here we are. And yeah, this is really the thing that we've all been waiting for. Yeah, they look really good together. Like I said, Victory Saber stands a little bit taller than DEATHSAURUS at the head, but they look pretty cool together. Again, proportionally for the show, I feel like DEATHSAURUS was slightly smaller in comparison, but they probably did a thing where, like, as soon as Star Saber became Victory Saber, DEATHSAURUS's model just magically got a lot bigger so that they would actually match. So I'm fine with the size that he is. I think that he makes for a nice substantial package. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the figure. Like I said, I'm going to do a separate video for Pipo and Boater just because there's already way too many things to cover in this video as is, and they don't really integrate all that much with the figure himself. They're just kind of, you know, a separate thing, a separate, you know, bonus pack in, so they kind of deserve their own video. But yeah, no, it's a really nice set. There's always going to be a discussion about like whether or not it's worth the close to $200 or wherever it was that I paid for this thing over a year ago, and whether or not it could have been done at a Commander scale. But regardless of all that, the figure as is very nice. It really doesn't have many things that disappoint me. There's like a couple things where it's like, okay, I wish he locked into the chair maybe a little bit better. I wish that maybe there was some more storage for things in alt mode. I wish that maybe the tail could peg onto his back in robot mode instead of just the shoulder. You know, they're all little nitpicky things, but overall, the package is a very good figure, and there's no like real issues with QC or anything like that. I have not seen any issues with any of the chrome scraping off. All of the joints feel really nice. He's got decent articulation. All the paintwork is really nice and clean. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we finally have Transformers HasLab DEATHSAURUS.